Okay, so what I have in the vise is a HiVis or high visible Griffiths Gnat. And we're going to cover several things on this. This is actually a ridiculously easy pattern to tie. I'll kind of touch on different wing placements. This is what we're going to go with, but I'll briefly show you how to put a tail or propped up wing that sticks out like that. We'll talk a little bit about hackle sizing and reinforcing the hackle itself if that's what you want to do. So let me get this out of here. And there's my hook. So what I'm putting in the vise here is a size 18 lightning strike. The lightning strike hooks are a little bit longer. If I can get it seated correctly, huh? The lightning strikes are a little bit longer than for their standard size than, say, like an umpqua or something like that. On those hooks, oftentimes this length would be considered a ×1 long. That's pretty beneficial if you're going to tie a HiVis. So anyway, the thread I'm using is 14-0 sheer black, and we'll just kind of get started. I'm going to start my thread about a bodkin width behind the eye. I'm going to take my thread back to about the third position, or where I want my wing to stand up. And we can trim this out. Next, what I have here, just to make it easy, now you don't have to do this step, but if you want wire in the back to reinforce your hackle, this is a good place to start. And then also, if you're going to put your wing up front here, this is a good way to help keep your wing out of the way, and I'll show you how that kind of works. The easy way to do this with these small materials on small hooks is slide it under your thread, and I'm just going to place a wrap or two in. You don't want it sticking out the front too far, so you can just kind of pull it back to where you need to. I typically try to stay about a hook or two hook shank lengths to the back. That's plenty. And fold that guy back forward. And I'm going to continue to wrap to the back. Now, I don't typically reinforce my hackle on these. And there's several different ways you can actually go about this, where you put the wire in the back, you tie your feather up front, and wrap back like an elk hair caddis, and then wrap forward and use the wire to hold that in place. These flies are actually pretty simple to tie. You can tie them pretty quick once you get the hang of it. And so I just don't go to all that extra effort on these little guys. So I'm going to put that, clamp that in my clip there, just to try to keep it out of my way. There's a little bend to it. So the material I'm using for my wing is just parapost material. There's several companies that make it. Let's see, I got Wapsie makes it, Hairline makes it. It's pretty much all the same. It's just this squiggly hair, really fine material. Sheds water reasonably well. If you have a hard time putting a wing in, or maybe you don't want a wing in, some I've actually seen them where people like to have the tails. You'll just tie your tail in right here. Kind of give you a quick demo of how that works. So you're going to tie your tail in here, wrap back to your barb, and then if you want it to stand up or prop up at an angle going out the back, you're just going to place a few thread wraps up underneath that material, like so, and it'll stick out the back. Or you can leave it flat down, although it doesn't give you quite the HiVis look, but anyway, so I'm going to take that off. I just wanted to show you that kind of for a flavor of some different things that you can do, that people do. I was trying to avoid saying do, but anyway. So like I was saying, I don't really reinforce this fly with my hackle. I think it's kind of a waste of time. But so if you're following along with the classes, I'm actually going to be clipping this out right here. But I'll leave that in there just for the sake of having it in there for the video. So now I'm going to wrap this back to about my barb or about the beginning of the bend of the hook. Oh, not yet. Hang on. Gotta do hackle. So with hackle, there's kind of several ways that this happens. When you're tying a dry fly, oftentimes you'll get a people have this dry fly gauge, looks something similar to this, and they'll take their hackle and they'll wrap it around the stem. If I can do that all on camera, that'd be awesome. Kind of like this. Now, and they'll have that flare open to where they can see the number and where the hackle is hitting. So this one's hitting actually right about an 18. Now when you have these long hackle fibers, this is a whiting hackle, but what can happen is as you get closer to the tip, it gets smaller and the hackle isn't as big. So when you're at the base of the bird, it might be, let's just say for instance, a 14, and then when you get up to the tip like this, it might be a 16 or whatever it is. So and then you know, you can save your tips too and use those for something fun. But anyway, so when you're sizing this hackle, a better way to do it is actually wrap it around your stem to see if it sits. Now you can see that this one's sitting just about right, which should be about 1 1/2 times the length of the gap of the hook from the point to the shank. Now when we add this extra material in here, say for instance the stem itself to tie in, and our Peacock Curl, that's going to increase the width of the hook shank. So what people will often do is downsize their hackle by 1. You can see how this one's just barely touching the hook point right there. And so when you do that, and we're going to go that route because it's going to get you a little bit better size, just to show you on video. And it does, but to be honest with you, it doesn't matter a ton. It can matter a little bit, but it's not going to matter like you know, leaps and bounds. As long as if it's gauged 18 and you tie it on an 18 and it's sticking down a little bit past 1 1/2 times, you'll be all right. So to tie this in, what I want to do, first let me show you how I prep the hackle. So I took some barbs off the stem, both sides. This is probably more than you really need to do, but I've got about a 1/4 inch there. And then I came up on my tie-in side, or the way that I'm going to wrap my feather, about an additional 1/8 of an inch. Now what this is going to do is going to help stop my hackle from trapping itself as it goes around. It's going to kind of provide a backstop with original barbs to help keep all of my hackle moving forward. And so I want to tie it in. Turn this to the side. So I want to tie it in so it's like this. And you want the longest barb where you intend to, just past where you intend to stop your thread. So something like right there where my little bodkin's pointing at. And there's just a tiny gap there. But so I'm going to tie this in on the side, put a couple wraps in, and now I can kind of turn it over and determine whether that's too far or not enough. You can kind of see that's a little too far, so I'll redo that. But anyway, just trying to give you an idea of some hackle things. The one thing you don't want to do is trap that first barb. Tied that in kind of cattywampus. Okay. And I don't want it traveling past my wire here, so I'm going to trim that back. Have it even or a little less. On a fly like this, it's not going to make a great deal of difference. So next I've got some Peacock Curl. This is dyed purple, just for fun. I'm not sure it really matters. What I'm going to do is I'm actually going to line up the tips like that. And I'm going to cut off, I don't know, 3/4 to an inch off there. And then what I like to do is if I'm tying these HiVis and I have this in place, I'll just kind of line those up at the front side there and tie those in so that they're in line or close to in line with the wire itself. Whoa, it's stuck. And I'm going to wrap forward. I'm going to stop just short of my wire, so you can see how my thread and my wire are offset just a little bit. Next, what I'm going to do is grab my parapost material or my wing material. I'm going to pull out, oh, it doesn't need to be much. You want it, each side you want it to stick up about the same. Just if you're not used to tying midges, this is a little bit easier way to do it, where you have bigger material to grab. So you know, that's about good. I can kind of gauge about how far I need it, and or you can fold it over if you want to get precise, whatever. I'm going to lay this back flat. Again, I'm going to slide this parapost material up underneath my thread, set it right on top, and just try to get it kind of even, like so. Now all I need to do is just place another wrap right over the top. I'm going to get my wire, and I'm going to kind of sneak it on the back side out and around until it comes into the middle. And now it doesn't want to sit in the middle because everything's off, kind of off center or off line, up and down. And so I'm going to take a thread wrap and push it over and get it to line up so that they're basically sitting one on top of another like that. Now I can fold my front wing to the back. I'm going to place another wrap in front. And what this is going to allow us to do is this wire is going to give us a place or a way for us to move all this material back and forth so it's not in our way. So what we need it to do is we need this wire to sit in between the two sides of the parapost. If it's not in the middle, it can't do its intended job. So you can kind of see how the wire's sitting in the middle. Next I'm going to do is I'm going to come up and around, and I'm going to start wrapping around the base, just like you do, say, like a parachute post or something like that, because this is actually exactly what you're going to do. Matter of fact, actually, if you have a hard time with parachute posts, this is a really neat trick that you can use for those too. That extra small wire, even if you're tying, say, on like a 12 or 10 or whatever to do a parachute, you can use that extra small wire just to help get that stuff out the way. I'm going to go 3 or 4 turns at the base. You can see I've got this little tiny base right there. But what I need to do in order to make this effective is I need to come up. So if you need to wrap your thread a little higher up, or we need to get it up about here where my bodkin is. So if you want to, which is, let's see here. So maybe a bodkin and a half width over the top of the shank. What I'm going to do is I'm going to just kind of cross it up with some loose wraps. And I'll place, oh, I don't know, 5 or 6 up top. And you'll see this little bubble form. Now don't worry about that little piece of thread that you see. That's not a big deal at all. And then to lock it off, I'm just going to come straight down on the back side, jump my thread to the front side. Now I'm going to continue wrapping forward. So now once you've got this part down or done, you can see the beneficial part to this. I can just take this, I can pinch it going forward, and it's going to force all that material going forward, and it keeps it there. Likewise to the back. So you don't want to do it too much because the wire could potentially snap being extra small, but just to get the fly tied, it can really help just keep that stuff out of your way while you work to finish off the rest of the fly. So on a size 18, 20, 22, 24 Griffiths Gnat, I'm just using one strand of Peacock Curl. If you go 16, you may want to do 2. 14, yeah, maybe 2. Don't go any bigger than 3 or any more than 3. And I'm just going to start wrapping this over and palmering it towards the wing there. And you don't have to get all crazy with it or anything. You know, I've seen some people that'll add a touch of glue to like the top part of the shank right here. That's okay, but what's going to ultimately happen is it's going to glue a bunch of the herl down, and it's going to, like, not that that's necessarily bad, but with being one strand, it's just going to kind of make all the herl just, you're not going to see it, is my point. It's going to absorb all that glue. So we're going to wrap up right to this little bubble here, like so. And then what I like to do, you don't have to, is I'm going to jump my thread forward. I'm going to move that to the back, and see, now it's out of our way. What I like to do is I like to move this back and forth and kind of come down and around, up and over, in kind of a figure 8 motion. Pull straight down, move my wing to the back, and then come up, forward, and around. So I've done this at 2 different directions diagonally. And then all that does is kind of helps fill in this little gap that you might have by just wrapping your peacock curl forward, because you know you can't wrap through this post. So it just kind of helps fill the body out a little bit. Again, I'm not sure that's super necessary, but anyway. And I'm just going to wrap up to my thread, which is about a bodkin width behind the eye. So I'm going to back this off a turn. So when I get here, and my herl's just kind of sitting right on top of my thread, I like to bring my herl to the front side of my thread, so that it already has started across. And now I'm just going to start wrapping back. You can add an extra turn in there if you want, or you can pull it forward right here and just cross back over if you need to. A couple turns either way and you're fine. When I get here, you can trim this out with your scissors if you find that to be easier. I just hold my bobbin in my hand, keep some tension tight right up next to the herl, and I'll take my finger and just pop it off, and then that's kind of the end of that guy. And I'll just move forward and back just to kind of clean up the head a little bit. So now we have this. This guy is obviously left over. That herl didn't snap on me. The whole idea here was just in case that herl snapped. You can rip this off. Good chance it's going to leave a little tag. So usually on these, when I do that, I'll trim it off just to keep that extra tag from being in there. So next we're going to move to wrapping our hackle forward. If the hackle's not playing nice, you can kind of do a sweeping motion out and around like this, and then lift up and come down. You may need to loosen up that tie-in point just a little bit by pulling your, sorry, I didn't mean to get my hand in the way, but by pulling your hackle forward, lifting it up, moving it around. These things tend to want to twist on you. I've got a little bit of twist in here, so hopefully I can avoid having it twist. Yeah, it's going to shoot to the front is what it's going to do. So I may have to sweep that out and around. Your hackle can really go either way. It doesn't matter whether the shiny side's forward or the dull side's forward. I'm going to put 2 wraps in the back. And I'm just going to start working this guy forward. Right up to behind my wing. Now, as you're coming up underneath the wing, you need to angle your feather forward and up. So if you can kind of see that, as I'm coming up, this top side of my hackle is on the front side of that little bubble, so that when I pull over, my hackle stays straight. Okay, and you can do this again. You can do this with larger feathers or whatever. So now, once I've got a couple turns in, I'm I need my thread, and I probably should have moved this back to begin with, but I need my thread back where my hackle is going to end. You can wrap back, but you can also see how there's a good chance you're going to catch some of these barbs. I will just undo my thread until I get back to where I need to be. Or close to it, I guess, because I guess I didn't quite get there. But you can kind of work it in and out if you need to. Okay. Now when I tie this off, I want to tie this off on the top side so that any fibers that get trapped are going to get trapped on the top side, and they're easy to cut out. If you try to tie it off on either side or the bottom, those fibers are way more likely to get trapped on the bottom side and block your eye. On bigger flies, it's probably not such a big deal. On a size 18 or smaller, I mean, it can stop you from even getting it on. So once I've got it up to the front, I'm just going to grab everything, kind of pull back. I'm going to place another wrap or two in front to make sure that hackle's out of my way, or those individual barbs are out of my way. And now I can cut this out. So there's several ways that are good ways to cut this small hackle out. One of them is cuticle clippers, where you can place it right up to the stem. You just create some tension and you kind of wiggle it and force it till it snaps, like so. You can use scissors, but there's a good chance you're going to cut some of the barbs because, you know, unless you've got those like ultra fine point scissors, it can kind of be a challenge. If you got stuff sticking out the front like that and you don't like it, you want to get rid of it, fingernail clippers are a good option here. Just make sure you stay off your thread. And then you can just place a few more wraps in. And there's your little Griffiths gnat head, kind of like so. So now you can see that this hackle that originally was up about right here is now down to here. So it can be a little challenging. Again, if you've wrapped this and your hackle is sticking out down here, you know, don't worry about it all that much. Don't cut it either. You'll mess up the fly. If you intend to wrap this guy forward and reinforce your hackle, what I like to do is place a double half hitch in, just to make sure that I'm secured. Again, I don't typically reinforce these flies. Some people ask for them. But now we can move our wing forward and out of the way. And we need to come the opposite direction of the way you wrapped your hackle. The reason I don't do that on these little tiny guys is because it's extremely difficult to maneuver around and through all this hackle. It doesn't want to move very well, and you wind up really fighting with trapping all this hackle down. Is it possible? Yeah. I guess it just depends on how much you want to save the fly. So I'm just kind of showing you. Then once you've come all the way through into the front side, you can tie it off on the front side. I don't really want this in there myself, but I wanted to make sure I threw that in there so you could see it. I'm going to use my dedicated wire cutters and trim that out. Next, to finish the fly, all we're going to do is take some crazy glue, and I'm just going to smear it on my thread. We don't need a whole lot here. You can see how very little I've got on there. Just those little beads. If you have a mini whip finisher, these are real beneficial on these little guys. Now I'm just going to come in and whip finish this fly with the glue in place. It's called a wet whip. And we're going to finish the head and seal it all in one maneuver. I'm just going to use my thumbnail to snip my thread off. Oh, well, I thought it was. we go. Then to finish this guy, all we're going to do is separate the wing. Again, get your dedicated wire scissors. You can see a little black mark there. You can also find these little mini wire cutters for like circuit boards or whatever. But I'm just going to use my dedicated wire scissors. I'm going to just trim it off right at the base. Now I can pull all my hackle forward. I can lift this thing up. And at this point you can kind of decide how tall you want it. You know, some people like that wing super tall like that. Typically I try to get it down right at or just above. I cut that one a little short, whoops. But something like that's just about the hackle height. That one came a little short of hackle, but you get the idea. So yeah, so there you go. There's a way to do a HiVis Griffiths Gnat. Several ways to do it. And if you want to tie just a regular Griffiths Gnat, seriously, all you do is leave all this other stuff that we just went over, leave that out, and you just put your thread on, wrap back. At your hook point, you're going to tie in your hackle, take it to the barb, tying your Peacock Curl going forward, wrap everything going forward. You know, hurl first, then your hackle, tie off, and that's just a regular Griffiths Gnat. And so that's really all there is to it. So there's not a whole lot of difference. The big difference is the different ways you can do a HiVis one, and people just like to do it different. You know, different strokes for different folks, I suppose. So anyway, that's it. If you liked the video, always appreciate a thumbs up. You can share it. That's always cool. If you found it, helpful, and you think somebody else will find it helpful, I don't mind sharing it. Go for that. Subscribe if you haven't subscribed. Really appreciate that one. This video is part of the fly tying classes we do over at Fly Tying for Beginners on Facebook. And so if you found this video outside of that domain, feel free to join us over there. We got a great group of people over there. We do giveaways, and we have tying contests, and we're getting ready to do a March Madness tying deal, and we do all kinds of fun stuff over there. It's a really great group. So feel free to join that. Answer the 4 questions, and that's your golden ticket in. Other than that, hopefully you pick something up from this. I know it's a 30-minute video or almost that on a super easy pattern, but hopefully we covered some things that you're not finding on other videos. So and just kind of put it all into one package. So other than that, happy tying, everybody. Take care, and we'll see you next time.